Hello everyone, back tuning in to the winter 2016-2017 forecast from GavsWeatherViz.com. So since the summer we've been looking at the winter, and it all started off with the NAO forecast that we did back in July, and then in September we began the Christmas updates, and we did those every week, every Sunday throughout the autumn. We did a Christmas update. We also did 3 seasonal model updates where we looked at the long range models, see what they were showing, and I said as went along, it was all building up a picture to eventually go into the winter forecast, and now we have arrived at that point. So we're finished with all the updates. We can do no more other than bring it all together and create the winter 2016-2017 forecast from GavsWeatherViz.com. And that's what I'm going to do for you tonight. So I'll get on with the forecast in a moment. I'll just talk you through everything that we've been looking at through the autumn first of all, and build up the picture so that you know why we are forecasting what we are forecasting. And then I'll actually get on with the forecast. So at the end, I'll leave you with a written summary of the GavsWeatherViz.com with a 2016-2017 forecast. Now, you're probably watching this on the homepage right now. Later on this evening, it will be placed on the winter updates page, this video, and there'll be a written report that goes with that as well. So if you can't watch the video all in one go, don't worry, you can come back and watch it on demand whenever you want it or whenever you need it. And there's also that written post that will be with the video on the winter updates page later on this evening. It'll probably be around 8:30, 9 o'clock this evening. Well, before we get on with the winter forecast, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on all the pages. Have a browse through and click through the links. If there's any articles that you're interested in, going to be helping us to pay for our website, and thanks very much for doing that. There's also video ads to most pages, which open that content when you watch them and close back up again. It does help to pay for GavsWeatherViz.com. And the Christmas shop is open, so click the green button that says Christmas shop. You can go off to our Christmas shop page, and then from there, click through the Amazon banners, do your Christmas shopping at Amazon as normal. Because you've gone from GavsWeatherViz to Amazon, we get a revenue fee on the things that you are buying, and a big thank you to everybody for doing that. Right, let's get on with the update then, and I'm going to start where we began when we did the NAO forecast, and that was right way back in the summer. That's when we first began thinking about winter 2016-2017 when we did the NAO forecast. So the NAO forecast is sort of the starting point. It's the base on which everything else is built, and it's based on sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic Ocean during the month of May. So this from NOAA is a great example of the sea surface temperatures that we had in the Atlantic Ocean in May 2016. What we're looking for is a tripole, really. We're looking for 3 bands, warm there, and then cold there, and then warm again there. And when you get a tripole in May, it can translate back later on into the winter to an increased chance of blocking and of a negative North Atlantic oscillation. Now, quite clearly in May we didn't have a tripole, so we couldn't forecast a negative NAO from May's sea surface temperature anomalies. But what we had got is a fairly warm tropical Atlantic, and just generally the Atlantic Ocean was a little bit warmer compared to recent years. So what we said with the NAO forecast is that we couldn't predict a negative NAO. It wasn't a signal for a cold, blocked winter on its own terms. But we thought the NAO would probably be more neutral. The Atlantic would probably be in a weaker phase compared to what we've had over the past 3 years, which is strongly set up for positive NAO condition. And when the NAO is positive, it increases the westerlies, the low pressure around Iceland, the high pressure through the Azores, and westerlies coming across the Atlantic. So we thought the Atlantic probably going to be a little bit more towards the neutral side of things for this winter, and overall not the huge player, an overriding signal, overriding everything else that we've seen over the past few winters. So sort of neutral NAO was the prediction, and that is where everything else started from. Now, through the autumn, we've been looking at both the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, see how they've been developing. So this is latest in the Atlantic, and I think it backs up what we was talking about, really. Yes, we've still got this colder blob up here to the south of Greenland, but it's warm around Newfoundland, a lot of warm sea surface temperature is there, and the tropical Atlantic still looking quite warm as well. But just generally, the Atlantic looks fairly warm, albeit not that warm, cold, warm tripole that we look for to get a negative NEO. But the Atlantic does look warmer, and that indicates and implies that probably we have less of a temperature differential through the Atlantic this year. And the jet stream shouldn't be powered up as much. We should have a more neutral more neutral Atlantic setup this year. Now, in the Pacific, two regions we look for. We look for the ENSO region just here. I'll talk about that in a moment. And then the northern part of the Pacific Ocean just here. We've seen a dramatic amount of cooling across the northern Pacific Ocean over the past month or so. Still warm towards the coast of Canada and America, however, but this area of cold water here, or cold sea surface temperature anomalies, is expanding all the time, and this probably favours going into a colder winter for us just a little bit. Down in the ENSO region, we've been keeping an eye on the development of La Nina. So Peru is here, Indonesia is over here. That's the ENSO region. And this blue area is the signature of very weak to borderline neutral to very weak La Nina condition. We are right on the threshold between being in a La Nina and being at ENSO neutral. I think we are just about weak La Nina condition, but my word, it's a close run thing. It may well be that we never have La Nina designated. I don't think we'll quite cover the 5 tri-monthly periods that we have to get a La Nina designated. So we're on the border between ENSO neutral and weak La Nina. And through the winter updates that we've been doing through the autumn, we know that this makes an important difference, because if you're at weak La Nina, it does seem to enhance your chance of winter blocking and have colder winters. If you're ENSO neutral, the signal is nowhere near as strong, and it's kind of a 50-50 split between milder and colder winters with ENSO neutral. It makes my job very, very difficult. If this was just a little bit stronger with the landing, you wouldn't want it to go to moderate or strong territory, because that is very much is a mild signal. But we just need it to be a little bit stronger to help us with the increased possibility of blocking. Where we are on this border between ENSO neutral and weak La Nina makes it very difficult. And I think the early part of the winter maybe does favour more the weak La Nina side of things, so more the blocking. And then as this goes back towards ENSO neutral, we probably start to lose that blocking signal a little bit. This is what CFS V2 is signaling with its ENSO forecast. So this is sort of a weak La Nina area just here. But by the time we go through to the end of the winter, we're back up here, so we're back to ENSO neutral. And that perhaps favours later in the winter a resumption of a stronger zonal flow, perhaps. And then, of course, as we've gone through these updates, we've also been looking at the models, so let's deal with those. CFS V2, in the last model update that we did at the weekend, that one favouring a mild winter now, so trough of low pressure in the Atlantic, a ridge down to the southwest, and bringing those zonal westerlies through across the country. So the temperature and the temperature signal, the temperature anomalies for this winter looking milder than average here across many parts of Europe. I'm not sure this is quite as mild now as it was when we did the third winter seasonal model roundup at the weekend, but nevertheless it's still signaling a mild winter for most of northern, central and western Europe. However, other models are signaling the chance anyway of a more colder blocked type winter pattern. So the UK Met Office GLOW-C5 has high pressure in terms of its mean sea level pressure anomaly in over Scandinavia, which would imply that we have an increased risk of easterly winds, particularly through the early part of the winter. And of course, we've also been interpreting the ECMWF model. This is mean sea level pressure anomaly from the EC seasonal model, and that one also going for quite a lot of blocking up to the north. There it is, with southerly tracking jet stream through here, and it implies the chance of a cold winter, albeit the temperature anomaly wasn't anything to get excited about. It does imply that for northern Europe, the pattern should give us a colder winter with that northern blocking. So the models were a bit split. However, on that third and final seasonal model roundup, there was very clearly a trend going on towards the milder side of things. So whilst perhaps some of the better models, say the JMA, the ECM, the UK Met Office, were on the colder side, the overall model consensus was for mild, so that makes it a little bit confusing as well. You do have to factor that in, that the models are generally, albeit there are exceptions, and the better models are the exceptions, generally the model trend is onto the milder side of things. We've looked at the QBO, of course. We started discussing this right at the beginning of the winter updates at the start of September, in a very unusual phase of the QBO. We should be easterly with the quasi-biennial oscillation. We should be doing something like that. But westerly phase of the QBO hung on. So this is where we are right now. You see easterly condition low down, but in the troposphere where weather taking place, which is this area just here, we are still within a westerly QBO. So what's going on, and we know this by looking at previous years, what's going on is unprecedented with the QBO. We have never been in this situation where the regular sort of rhythm of the QBO has been lost, and it's doing something completely new and unique. So quite what the impacts of this are, nobody can say, to be honest, because it's something that's never happened before, certainly not in recorded weather history back to 1950, and probably even going further back than that to 1900. What we can say is that westerly QBO tends to increase the zonal westerlies, so you tend to have a stronger polar vortex when you're in a westerly QBO, whereas the easterly QBO tends to have weaker zonal westerlies and a weaker polar vortex. So in theory, we should be seeing quite a strong polar vortex because we're still in the westerly QBO. However, it hasn't worked out like that so far, but particularly this autumn. The QBO has, or I should say the zonal westerlies, polar vortex, has been quite weak, despite the fact we're still in that westerly QBO. And that could be down to the fact that the QBO is doing something unique. So whilst we are in a westerly QBO, technically it's a very weak westerly QBO, and as we know, we should actually be in an easterly QBO right now. Nevertheless, this is the joke in the pack, because there's no way of telling what the actual impacts of this is going to be. It's the weather doing something totally new and unique, so we're just going to have to wait and see, really, and measure what the response to this very unusual phase of the QBO has been. It doesn't really help me with the winter forecast either way. So we've seen a stronger hurricane season. We're monitoring that through the winter updates. We've had the strongest hurricane season since 2012, with 16 storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major Category 3 or above hurricanes. So it has been the strongest hurricane season since 2012. And hurricanes are dumping warm air from the tropics and distributing them around the northern hemisphere, and eventually that heat gets into the polar regions. So when you have a lot of hurricanes dumping a lot of heat in the polar regions, it can translate back to an increased chance of blocking. So the fact we've had the strongest hurricane season since 2012 possibly does favour an increased chance of blocking. At the start of the winter updates, we tracked the Arctic sea ice melt season, and this is where we went with the melt season at its minimum. Big melt season again, although not reaching the death spiral year of 2012. However, the refreeze has been shockingly slow, and now we actually have a record Arctic ice extent for this time of the year. We are under the death spiral year, which is the green dash line of 2012. We are under that right now. The refreeze of the North Pole has been incredibly slow, probably tied in with the blocking that we've seen over the North Pole. And there is a theory that when you get a slow melt, or a big melt season, and a slow refreeze of Arctic sea ice, it can increase the risk of winter blocking. Hence, it's a signal for a colder winter. This has only come about in the last 10, 15 years, so it's a little bit new and controversial, but that theory is in place. However, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, really, because does the blocking already been in place cause the melt season, or does the melt season cause the blocking? It's hard to know which is cause and which is effect, but either way, it does appear that when you have a big Arctic melt season and a slow refreeze, it can increase the risk, or it goes along with an increased risk of northern blocking, particularly on the Eurasian side of the pole. Talking of the polar regions, we'll have a look at snow cover across Russia and Eurasia next. I've been keeping an eye on that through the autumn. We know what happened in October. We started off with nothing particularly exciting going on at the middle part of October. That's about what you expect to see at that point. Until 21st of October, again, nothing really exciting happening. But at the end of October, a sudden surge of snow cover took place. This is the 27th of October. This is 28th of October, 29th of October. Notice it's increased all the time. This is 30th of October, when suddenly the whole of Russia is covered, and that snow is pushing into eastern parts of Europe as well. And there we go, to the end of October. The last day of October, I should say. So, generally, through most of October, the snow cover across Russia, across Siberia, and into Scandinavia and Europe was about what you expect, about on trend. But as we got to the very end of October, we suddenly had that surge of snow into west of Europe, or into the west of Russia and the east of Europe. The last time we saw anything like that was 2012, and that's the last time we had a cold winter. So this is the end of October 2012 in terms of snow cover. Notice on the 26th of October 2012, nothing particularly exciting happening, about what you expect. But by the 27th, look at that, a sudden surge takes place, taking that snow across much of northern Russia and into Europe, and covering Scandinavia as well. And that continues into the end of October 2012. So what we've seen this year with snow cover across Russia and into Europe is very similar to what we saw in 2012, and that's the last time we had a cold winter. Now, the past 3 years have had big increases of snow, albeit not quite to that extent to get into Europe by the end of October, but we have seen fairly big snow cover seasons over the past 3 years, and that hasn't been associated with particularly cold winters. So this on its own is not enough to say we will have a cold winter. It has to be combined with other factors, but it is, or it was, pretty interesting. And then, of course, we kept an eye on solar activity, sunspots across the sun. And this was the GazWeatherVid's Winter Update Daily Solar Tracker that our good friend James Ackrill kept going. And James has been invaluable in helping me with the winter updates, I have to say. And I know James is going to be watching. Big thank you to James for all of his help through this season. So with the solar tracker, we've generally been seeing downwards movement in activity over the past few months. So we start here with the solar tracker when we had a fairly strong amount of sunspot numbers actually at that point, albeit declining from where he was a couple of years ago. But you notice through the autumn, through the winter updates, generally all of the trend lines are moving down. The green line, the orange line, and the pink line as well. All the lines seem to be trending downwards as we move through the winter updates with the GazWeatherVid solar tracker. And you'd expect that really, because we are in the declining phase of the current solar cycle number 24. In fact, this is where we are predicted to be for November, with sunspot activity this month. So we're down there, and we are on a par with where we was back in 2010. That's this part of the chart just there. But there is one big difference in terms of the sunspot numbers that we had in 2010 to the sunspot numbers that we have right now. In terms of total numbers, we're very close. But the one big difference is that in 2010, we was coming out of solar minimum. We was moving upwards from solar minimum and gradually increasing activity very, very slowly. Whereas now, we are declining out of solar maximum, which occurred just there at the start of 2014. We're in the declining phase of the solar cycle. And we know that the best phase of the solar cycle to get cold winters is either at solar minimum, when you're actually at the minimum of solar activity, or you're just coming out of solar minimum. So where we was in 2008, 2009, 2010, that was the best time of the solar cycles of solar cycle 23 and 24 to get colder winters. The phase of the solar cycle that we're at now, which is declining from solar maximum, isn't as good to get cold winters. Nevertheless, that is a very low sunspot number that we see there for November 2016. And when you have low sunspot numbers, it does increase the chance of blocking. So whilst we're not at the best part of the phase to get cold and block winters, the fact that the sunspot numbers are so minimum or so minimal probably does help us a bit get some blocking this winter. And then through the winter updates, also be looking at analogues. So we looked at the warm Septembers, and they generally implied a milder than average winter. Had a very warm September, and that generally implied the chance, or a greater chance, having a milder than average winter. We also looked at Octobers that have a lot of high pressure centred over Scandinavia. A much more mixed signal with that. They didn't particularly, because had a lot of high pressure over Scandinavia during October 2016, they didn't particularly coincide with cold winters necessarily, but what they did coincide with is at least one of the winter months, one of the 3 winter months. It was split between which of the 3 it would be, but at least one of the winter months, on many of these winters following Octobers with high pressure over Scandinavia, many of those winters, one of those winter months, were coming out cold. So whilst not a signal for a cold winter necessarily, it does imply that at least 1 month this winter should be fairly cold. And then in the last update, we had a look at Novembers with a lot of blocking. It was a mixed bag with that, not a huge sample to go at, but this is how November 2016, in terms of reanalysis, is shaping up, with quite a lot of high pressure over the Arctic and a trough underneath and across Western Europe. That's a pretty cold looking signal. And it's a bit of a mixed bag with that, but there were some interesting years in there with the analogues package, particularly, of course, 1962. I won't dwell on that too much. But generally, the analogues through the autumn started off implying quite a mild winter, and they have got more interesting, I think, as we've gone along. So, in the last update, the final update that we did on Sunday, James put it all together, all of the Gasworthy's methodology, and tried to come up with an analogues package that factored in warm Septembers, Octobers with Scandinavian blocking, blocking in November, and then the El Nino stuff, either El Nino to La Nina, or El Nino to weak La Nina, or El Nino to ENSO neutral, and what's going on in the Atlantic and Pacific in terms of the AMO and PDO, factoring the QBO as well, although that's very difficult to factor in, because, of course, it's doing something unique and very different. And also the solar cycles. And putting it all together, putting the Gasworthy's methodology together, this is the 500 millibar height anomaly that we come out with. And it looks like it implies the greater chance of a blocked and colder winter with high pressure to the north and low pressure to the south, which probably increases the risk of easterly or northerly type influences. Notice this high pressure is centered to the south of Greenland, so it's not being centered up here, it's not being centered over top of the pole, so it doesn't imply a severe winter. You would get moderation with this. At times you would bring the flow in from the Atlantic like that, but it does imply overall a chance of a colder winter, and the mean sea level pressure anomaly is very different. The only difference really with sea level pressure anomaly based on the Gaz-Weatherby's methodology is that the ridge backs more towards Scandinavia. But again, it's the same idea, ridge to the north and trough going down to the south, probably implying more of an easterly type influence. Again, the ridge is not being centered right over the top of the pole, so it's not like 1962-63 or the December to remember in 2010. It's not very severely cold signal, but it is overall probably a colder than average signal of the Gaz-Weatherby's methodology this year. So, and I think that's what we're going to go with. We are going to go with a colder than average winter of 2016-2017, but not a severe winter. I don't think we're going to be going down into sort of the coldest winters that we've ever recorded. I don't think we're going to be going back to 62, 63 or 1947 or even December 2010, or probably not even 09, 10. I would think something more along the lines of what we had, say, in 2012, 2013, in terms of the winter months. Of course, 2013 did get quite severe by the time we got to March, but for the actual winter, it's just a little bit colder than average, so something along the lines of that. And then maybe another year is 2005, 2006. And if we play our cards right, maybe something along the lines of, say, 1990, 1991, although I'd be surprised if we got as severe as we did in February 1991. So a cold winter, yes. I think temperature anomalies will come out around, say, half a degree, maybe up to 1 degree colder than the long-term 30-year temperature average. But I don't think we'll be going down sort of 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees cold on average like we can do in the severest winters. I think we're also going to have quite a dry winter this year, so I don't anticipate huge amounts of floods. But I think this cold is going to be on and off, so we will get several periods of moderation. We will get several milder periods coming through, and in those milder periods, it could, of course, turn wet and windy at times. So it'd be a sort of winter where it gets cold, wind goes into the east, maybe brings some wintry conditions for a few days. Then the cold relents, it turns milder, you get a thaw, reprieve, and then back comes the cold. Again, that sort of on-off cold pattern is what I'm expecting for this winter, rather than anything really locked in and going on and on and on with copious amounts of snow. No month overall is signalled to be colder than any other from our methodology, and I would suspect that what happens is that the cold is on and off through the winter. So when we average it all out, it might be that January comes out the coldest of the 3 winter months. I think that probably holds the coldest potential, but I would suspect we'll have colder interludes, colder periods throughout the winter, really, in December, January, and even February. There has been a lot of talk about February perhaps being a milder, stormier month. I'm not really seeing that from our methodology. Of course, I could be completely wrong with this. But I think all 3 winter months will have some cold potential, but always with the cold relenting to allow milder conditions to come through. So a drier and colder than average winter, yes, but with moderation, not a severely locked-in winter. And the reason I've not gone for a severe winter is just that I don't think several of the things that we look at are pointing to a winter that's that severe. So, for example, we aren't in the right phase of the solar cycle yet to be thinking about severe winters. Another couple of winters on, yes, okay, we can start thinking about really cold and severe winters, potentially. Also, with ENSO, it would have been better if we'd been more into La Nina than we are, albeit only weak La Nina, but we needed to be a little bit more into La Nina. We needed that tripole in the Atlantic. So several of the factors are not right to go very cold, go severely cold, but we've got enough here, I think, to suggest that we're likely to have a colder winter, certainly colder than the past 3, certainly more wintry weather than we've been used to over the past 3 years, and I think overall, when we average it all out at the end of winter, we will probably come out with a slightly colder than average winter. So that's it. That's the GavsWeatherVids.com winter 2016-2017 forecast. In a nutshell, it's dry and quite cold with some wintry potential, some snowfall, certainly more than we've had over the past 3 winters. But there will be moderation. There will be milder spells coming through as well. As ever, it's just my interpretation of what I think is around the corner. I could be totally wrong with this. I don't guarantee any forecast at GavsWeather is particularly for long range stuff, so just a heads of what I think is going to happen. And perhaps one interesting factor is that I think Christmas could be a little bit colder as well compared to what we've had over the past years. I think that does hold a greater potential for colder weather. But don't be putting any money on the outcome of this forecast by any means. I could be very wrong indeed. We will evaluate winter forecast when we get to the end of the season, at the start of the spring. I'll evaluate it and see how we did, and if it's gone wrong, we'll go through, or try to go through what has happened and what could have gone wrong. Right, so at 30 minutes, that's the GavsWeatherVids.com winter 2016-2017 forecast done. Been a fascinating season of updates. I hope you've enjoyed the journey. It really has been a lot of fun for me to do winter updates. I hope you've had as much fun watching them. And all that's left really is for me to leave you with a written summary. So things are going to go quiet now. I'll say my farewells and thanks very much for watching. And I'll just leave you with that written post, just sort of summing up everything that we've discussed. Right, thanks for sticking with the winter updates. And at 30 minutes over, thanks for watching.